So thanks everybody. Welcome back. So March is going to be a huge month for Ethereum. Okay, we're going to talk about why in this video. We talked about a little bit on the streams lately, but I want to cover it today. We're going to talk about February, what happened, some recap on those metrics, why they're so bullish for the space moving forward. So a recent DeFi hack that happened, kind of cover the details of everything inside of that, how you can protect yourself from this kind of stuff in the future. And of course, we're going to look at the prices today because that's one of the first things on everyone's mind as they're coming off this weekend. That was pretty brutal. I saw a big dump happen over the weekend. I'm sure lots of people are worried, like, is the market over? Is this going to recover? Like, what's going to happen next? So before we get into that, if you're new around here, hey, I'm Gregory, and on this channel, I turn you into a blockchain master. So if that's something that you're interested in, then smash that like button down below for the YouTube algorithm and subscribe to this channel. And if you want to learn how to become a blockchain master step by step from start to finish, then head on over to dappuniversity.com/bootcamp to get started today. All right, so let's get into the first thing that I'm sure is on top of everybody's mind right now, which is what's going on with the price of Ether. Okay, so let's pull that up here. So, of course, it was a pretty brutal weekend, right? I'm sure there were a lot of people who were kind of losing hope because ETH was, 2K, about a week ago. All right. I kind of was talking about this, how I wouldn't surprise me if we got the ETH 2K really soon. And once we got there, I was like, hey, we could see a pretty sharp correction. We've been looking at the metrics for Bitcoin. Things are getting really close to the euphoria line on Glassnode for the Nupal chart. We can talk about that here in a minute. We've been looking at that on these streams. The Ether price has been tracking pretty closely with the Bitcoin price for months now. Okay, we've seen it kind of accelerate a little bit more from time to time. We've seen that ratio kind of change a little bit, but for the most part, they've been kind of doing about the same thing. So of course, Bitcoin's been the market leader whenever it takes a big nosedive like this, when we see the whole market kind of correct. We've been talking about how we've seen some correlations with that in the stock market lately. So I'm sure a lot of people are wondering, like, hey, is this dip over? Well, you have to be careful, of course, when you see people on Twitter that just say, hey, buy the dip now, buy the dip now. Because we don't know if this reversal here means that we just trend higher now, that it's up only for here, that this is a bottom. It very well could be, right? But you have to be careful, okay? Because sometimes this is a fake out where we see it trying to recover and we leg down more. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be like the long-term top or anything, but you could get scared, sell, lose money that way. So if you end up, I like to say, I don't want to give big financial advice on this. I'm not a big trader, not a big TA guy. I like to look at the big picture, telling you how I feel about the stuff that I'm personally invested in, mostly Ether, Bitcoin, a handful of DeFi projects. I personally am not taking money off the table right now. I'm still optimistic about the big picture long term. I don't think anything's really fundamentally changed. I don't have a good reason to think that our long-term upward trend has stopped or anything like that. The second I think that, then I'll be fully transparent with you about on this kind of on these streams. Because what's really dangerous is you don't want to tell people, like, you have plenty of people who were doing this in 2017 who were like, buy the dip, and it was the absolute top. So you definitely don't want to do that. So so somebody says, yeah, caught it on sale. I mean, it might be, right? But you gotta be careful. You gotta be careful, especially if you're doing short-term trading. Again, I'm a long-term buy and hold. I'm definitely a holder, so I'm not trying to time things. I mean, I do like dips. Of course, I have personally bought dips, especially on this run up. I bought it when it dipped just below $1,000 in January. But I'm personally not buying more right now. So let's and Bitcoin, I would say basically the same thing about Bitcoin. We can look at some metrics here. We can look at Glassnode. Okay, we can look at the Nupal chart. I mean, the good news is, we've been checking these Nupal metrics. Everybody's new and doesn't understand Nupal. Basically, what it does is it checks the short answer is when you see things here that are blue on the Nupal chart, when the metric is above 0.75 and indicates that you state of euphoria in the market. This metric is calculated based on the number of people who have unrealized profit or loss. So basically, the amount of people who have Bitcoin in their wallet that is profitable, isn't they haven't lost any money because the price hasn't gone down. So when a lot of people are doing that, that typically means that we're in kind of a state of euphoria once you cross a certain line. There's a formula to calculate it, all that kind of stuff. It's a little bit deeper than that, but that's the gist. We, of course, want to really watch out for when we cross that 0.75 mark, when you see blue on this chart here. We've seen states in the past where, we did see blue and then it corrected and then we came back up. But most of the time when you see blue, it's bad news for a while. And some people would say, hey, this is actually 2 bull markets. I don't know. We'll see. But we have not crossed into blue territory. We kissed it right before we were getting here. And I was getting a little bit worried, to tell you the truth. I mean, I kind of talked about that. I was like, hey, if we go into the blue here and we rock it, to 100K, maybe that's our long-term top, but we've reset. And the cool thing about Newpol is it sucks for people who lost money here, but for the overall market, the Newpol metric actually resets on these price corrections, and we're seeing kind of like what we did here in January. We got, we're getting close to 0.75 in January. We dumped, the Newpol metric resets. We kissed 0.75. We basically kissed euphoria. Price corrected. We come back down. If we continue to trend higher, then we'll probably keep seeing these lows trend higher too. Yeah, we'll see. But again, we may not just snap back, right? This may be a fake out. We might range sideways for a while. We might have a fake out and then trend downward for a little longer. But I mean, long term, I would just put it this way. It would surprise me if we entered into some crazy, multi-year bear market after this. I really don't think that's going to happen. But it's all about probability. You know what I mean? Something bad could happen in the stock market that blows all of our assumptions and, makes a lot of the stuff go out the window. I don't know. So you always got to keep that stuff into perspective. So while we're here, we're going to talk about the bullish updates for Ethereum in March. But let's look at some more metrics since we're looking at Glassnode here in our on-chain analysis. Let's look at some really bullish metrics for the entire space that happened in February before we get on to March. Okay. So let's look at what's going on in ETH land. All right. So we pop over to ETH here. A really cool metric that was crossed in February is 100,000 deposits to the ETH2 staking contract. Okay. It crossed 100,000 deposits, and that's translating into close to 70,000 activated validators. So why is this important? Well, it shows you the community confidence for ETH2 and that it's going to be successful, that people are willing to take a big risk on this, because don't underplay this, okay? There's so much marketing. There's so many marketing narratives right now going on from other projects that are just like, ETH is dead. ETH is too slow. It's not going to work. And nobody ever talks about how basically we're really close to layer 2 scaling solutions being here on ETH1 right now. And that ETH2 is being actively worked on, and that the community actively believes in ETH2, okay? So think about the psychology of people who are going to go stake on Ethereum 2.0. Because if you don't know this, if you want to move to ETH 2.0 right now, it's being developed in parallel with ETH 1, you have to take Ether. You have to take 32 Ether, which at the current price level, I don't have off the top of my head, let's just pull it up. It's a lot of money. So let's see. So what is the ETH price right now? It's $1,500 about. So 1,500 times 32. So you have to take about $50,000, okay, send it to a smart contract and lock it up for a year plus, all right? You can't get it back, and then your ETH2 validator will activate once you go through all these crazy setup steps, and you'll start earning a passive income reward, but you can't withdraw that either. You're locked up for a long time. So you have 100,000 individual deposits. They're probably not, they're not all probably 32 Ether deposits, because you can send in, increments. So it's hard to know exactly how many individual people are doing it, or how many individual validators, that represents, but at least $65,000, at least 65,000 validators. I'm sure one person could run multiple validators, so it's not necessarily 65,000 people, but at least 65,000 validators worth of 32 Ether deposits or $30,000 to $50,000 deposits are locked up in ETH. So that's a long way of saying that's huge, right? That's a lot of money, a lot of confidence in that network that it's going to do what it says it's going to. So anybody that says that like nobody believes in ETH2, that it's just useless, it's just really insane. Okay, and this is a huge milestone. We've crossed 100,000 individual deposits, and I wouldn't surprise me if sooner rather than later this actually translated into 100,000 active validators on ETH2, because you have to go through an activation period, all that kind of stuff. So super bullish metric. So look at some other ones. So on-chain stablecoin volume surpasses $360 billion for February. Okay. We're seeing this trend upwards. So again, stablecoins I think are a huge benefit of DeFi for lots of reasons. I mean, faster settlement and lower fees for large amounts is probably the biggest benefit, to tell you the truth. I mean, I talk about this a lot on my channel. If you've ever had to do a wire transfer, it's insane. Like, you have to go into a physical bank, sign a bunch of documents, give your ID, prove that you are you. I did this a couple months ago, okay? And whenever I was in the bank, like, they couldn't tell me when my funds would be deposited for sure into the other person's account. And I had to actually get on the phone and call the recipient and say, hey, did you get this money? Did you get this money? And it took forever for us to find out like whether the wire actually went through. And the bank could never tell me because of all the crazy infrastructure that has to go through before it's actually settled. So that's one reason I'm super bullish on stablecoins, especially for like those types of applications. Because if I wanted to send that amount of money with stablecoin, all I have to do is know that recipient address, send a test deposit to that address, confirm receipt, send the entire amount. It's done in a matter of minutes. Okay. So we're seeing stablecoin volume absolutely skyrocket. Of course, there's lots of other use cases. That's one just illustration that I like to use that makes me bullish on stablecoins. So monthly crypto exchange volumes broke $1 trillion for the first time in February. Man, that's nuts. $1 trillion in trading volume on exchanges. Of course, that's centralized exchanges. So there's lots of it's not necessarily DEXs. But it's huge. Just show you the activity of what's going on in this market right now. And there's lots of active participants who are trading a lot of money. So let's actually look at the bullish news for the Ethereum ecosystem in March, because this is something you definitely want to watch out for. So we talked a lot on this channel about the gas fee problem on Ethereum, the problem. Lots of people, are worried about ETH2 or worried about Ethereum because the gas fees are so high. And they try to go to an app like Uniswap, trade a token. It's $100 for them to get in and out of a trade. They say that's just cost prohibitive. It's going to kill all my profits. ETH is never going to work. And then, of course, you have all these other projects that have really predatory marketing messages that are like, hey, yeah, ETH is terrible. We're going to eat their lunch, right? But what they never talk about is how basically that problem is being worked on, actively fixed for ETH. So with layer 2 scaling solutions, I'm talking about a lot on this channel. It's building a second layer on top of Ethereum, where you can take some of the computational load off of the base chain itself, perform it on the second layer. That will help reduce those transaction costs for the second layer, and then also probably in turn reduce some of the gas costs on layer 1 by taking some of that volume and moving it somewhere else. So the huge bullish news that we talked a little bit about before that you want to watch out for in February is layer 2 hitting the street, I think, pretty aggressively. Okay, so Optimism. We talked about this. Optimistic rollups are a layer 2 scaling solution. Optimism is one implementation of this, and they did a mainnet soft launch in January, and their full on mainnet launch is happening in March. Okay, so essentially Optimism is going to be here in full force in March. I don't know the applications that will necessarily, all the applications that will actually come out of the gate with this in March. It would not surprise me if we saw some big implementations of this very soon after. So I think the optimism is going to be available mid-March. So that very well could mean that we see projects right after this come out, and it would just be absolutely massive. Okay, so I don't have the official word on like what Uniswap is going to do for V3 for layer 2 scaling solutions. It would not be surprise me if that's what it was. Again, this is just pure speculation on my part. I don't know for sure. So don't go around saying like Optimism is going to launch or Uniswap's going to launch Optimism. It wouldn't surprise me, and it wouldn't surprise me if it happened relatively soon. Okay, because there is incentive for some of these DeFi projects to actually do this, to get this working. Some people say there's not, because there's plenty of people who use layer 1 Ethereum right now to pay the gas fees, all that kind of stuff. That's something you have to think about too. You have to think about the gas fee as kind of you have to think opposite, because the gas fees are high because there's demand to use the network. And if the demand went away, the gas fees would go down. So there's still plenty of people who want to use ETH despite the high gas fees. It's because they're making a lot of money flipping large amounts of money on Ethereum. All right. So that's the big news to watch out for in March. I mean, I think it's going to be a huge catalyst. And, of course, not financial advice, but it's common for these big types of breakthroughs to be accompanied by price increases. All right. So not financial advice. We don't know for sure. It could have no effect. All right. So I'm not making any guarantees, but to me, this is incredibly bullish. Okay. Incredibly bullish. So, if let's just say the market overall has been trending downward and it keeps continuing to trend downward in March. Again, don't forget, March historically has been a bad month for Bitcoin. Many Marches out of the past decade have had negative returns for Bitcoin. Maybe we've already experienced that ahead of schedule in February. I don't know. Hard to say. But, something like that happens, and maybe we don't see, positive price action based on an event like this. So no guarantees, but it would not surprise me if this was bullish for the ETH price. So more, another thing to talk about is NFTs still going mainstream, okay? So let's see here. Yeah, pull this up on my screen. I guess I lost the news story here, everybody. Sorry, now here it is. So NFTs are definitely going more mainstream. I mean, I'm seeing, different celebrities, making their avatar like a CryptoPunk or something like that, or some other NFT. I'm seeing more people, talk about it, and people saying like, hey, I've had people ping me on Twitter from some kind of low-key famous people who are like, hey, I need to find somebody who knows stuff about NFTs. So there's lots of people who are, NFT has gone low-key mainstream, okay? I don't have the Google search trends in front of me, but the last time I checked, the search volume for the term NFT surpassed DeFi, okay? And this is huge because one hypothesis is that there's a larger number of individuals, like just regular people, who would care about NFTs over DeFi, because there's gonna be plenty of high net worth individuals and institutions who will care about DeFi, who command a large amount of money. So even if that's a smaller pool of people, the amount of money they could bring into the DeFi ecosystem could still be a stronger driving force. But in terms of actual individual users, NFTs could have a larger user base, especially in the short term, because they're people who care about art, music, collectibles, who don't really care about finance. They don't care about owning Bitcoin. They don't care about, speculating on cryptocurrency, all that kind of stuff, or they're maybe not as financially literate. And we're seeing that, you know what I mean? And we're seeing this, big news stories come out about, how a 10-second video clip sold for 6.6 million. And you see this kind of stuff. There's no NFT in the keyword for the title, right? It's basically trying to reach people who don't know what the NFT keyword is. So they're getting hooked in with this thing that someone, is like, they're talking about the benefit basically, or the bizarre part of the story, of course, and that gets clicks. And then people go and they learn through a major publication like this, and they basically get educated on what NFTs are and what blockchain is, right? There's no blockchain in the keyword. There's no NFT in the keyword. There's no insider language. But yeah, it's crazy. Absolutely crazy. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about is a DeFi exploit that happened since the last stream. Okay, so let me pull up my whiteboard here because I want to explain this because this is important to understand. I want you all to stay safe out there. So we're going to talk about this, okay? Okay, so sorry, I'm pulling up the article here. All right, so DeFi building block serves full rule combo exploited for $14 million. Okay, so what happened here, it was essentially an exploiter was able to transfer tokens out of users' wallets who had approved the application to spend their money. All right. Essentially what they did was they tricked the actual app itself into thinking that Aave, so Aave basically is another DeFi application, that they tricked the application into thinking that they were the new Aave 2 implementation and for their app to use it, okay? So I don't have the full details on everything that happened here, but what I want to talk about is how you can stay safe from something like this, okay? So let's talk about ERC20 tokens and how they work and how you use a DeFi application with ERC20 tokens. So, so whenever you're using a DeFi app, let's say something like DAI, for example. So it's an ERC20 token. It's a stable coin. Its price doesn't change. A really common use case for DAI is to use it for like yield farming, like liquidity mining. So stable coin yield farming. Okay. So whenever you do that, a lot of times, so sometimes you'll deposit. Well, that's maybe not the best application. So one really popular one is to trade tokens on Uniswap, right? So a lot of people are familiar with that. So say you want to trade DAI for a different cryptocurrency, like comp tokens or something like that, okay? Before you trade it, to this Dapp right here, you have to call approval on the ERC20 token. So what this does is it takes your tokens and lets this particular Dapp spend them for you or trade them, all right? So whenever you swap token on Uniswap, you first have to approve it, and then that's step one. And then, you trade. Okay. All right, then you trade. So it's 2 steps. All right. Now, that being said, not all dApps will clear this approval. Like, you always won't, you necessarily haven't approved, you haven't cleared this approval always after you complete this operation. Okay. So, inside ERC20, something called an allowance. So that basically says how many tokens is this app allowed to spend for me, okay? So what you really want to make sure is that no other applications are allowed to spend tokens for you after you permit them to do it. Because if you go to an exchange, you approve a certain Dapp to spend the tokens for you, that approval or that allowance is not always reset after that interaction. Okay. All right. And some apps will like do an infinite approval. All right. So not everyone. Okay. But this is something you gotta watch out for, because that's kind of what's happened with the underlying exploit that happened here. Is basically another Dapp that was integrated into this one came in and kind of faked being somebody they weren't and got integrated into this application, and then basically took advantage of this and looked at everybody who had approvals on the platform and drain tokens from their wallet. So that's what it looks like on the surface to me from my limited knowledge of this exploit. Again, I'd have to actually look at what happened on chain and analyze it in depth to say that with the most confidence possible. But that's the big picture, okay? So how can you help guard yourself from this? Well, you can actually reset the approval. You can go to Etherscan, find the token that you have approved, go to the approve function, put in the address of the smart contract that you've interacted with, and set it to 0. That'll reset it. You can look at a website like, let's see here, approved.zone or like revoke.cash. You can put in your Ethereum address and see what your approvals are, and you can use that to start like revoking those approvals, because this is the way you stay safe in DeFi, is to make sure that you're not just going out there and that you don't have a bunch of open-ended permissions for applications to spend your funds that you don't want to. Okay. All right, so let's see if we got some questions here in the chat. All right, so let's see. So am I planning on a session using GraphQL or caching scheme? So I did do some videos on the Graph protocol. So the Graph does use GraphQL for querying Ethereum. So that's something you can check out if you want to. What can ETH do that ADA or ADA can't? Well, ETH has smart contracts. Do I like tacos? Yes, I like tacos. Let's see here. Let's see here. So layer 2 is almost here. Not sure when. So somebody says, what were you saying? Just saying about someone accessing someone else's wallet. So go check out the stream. You can watch the replay. Essentially, the idea is that whenever you use a DeFi application where you have to approve tokens, you want to make sure that your approvals are cleared after you finish those transactions, or else someone can potentially have permission to spend your funds. Nice message. Just finished the Windows setup for the boot camp. Awesome. So that is a great question. So once you've created your own Dapp, what's the next step? So I'm assuming that you're talking about, it depends on what you mean. Are you talking about to, get a job, or to launch your own Dapp on Ethereum and actually get users? The question will change depending on what your goal is. If it's to basically, get exposure and get a job or something like that, you want to create some sort of portfolio, open source the code, create, a website that shows what you can do, include that Dapp on there. You can record a screencast of you talking about it. And then you want to talk to as many people who could hire you as possible. And that's basically your portfolio piece. If you want to launch your own ETH Dapp, so let's look at that, maybe the clarification there. After you do that, then you need to get users. So you could do lots of stuff. You could you could pound the pavement. You could jump in the Discord servers, Telegram groups, talk to the people who are in the space. You can start a YouTube channel, talking about your Dapp, showing it off, all that kind of stuff, getting as much exposure as possible, offer people incentives to use it. You, of course, need to look at the regulatory hurdles of doing, like, launching your own cryptocurrency, but I know lots of people do liquidity mining to incentivize new users for their dApps, but you gotta be careful about that kind of stuff. Always check with your legal counsel before you do that. All right, everybody. So that's all I got for today. As always, smash that like button down below if you haven't already. Subscribe to this channel. It really helps these videos out so more people can learn about blockchain. If you're as fascinated with this technology as I am and you want to get your hands dirty, how can you get started today? Go to my YouTube homepage. You can find any of my free courses there, like Udemy courses, but they're totally free. If you like those, you want to take the next step, or hey, maybe you want to take a master shortcut entirely, I can show you master blockchain step by step from start to finish over at dappuniversity.com/bootcamp. All right, you don't have to be an expert to get started today. I've helped people with zero coding experience become real-world blockchain developers in a matter of months. All right, so that's all I've got. Until next time, thanks for watching Dapp University.